Okay, we will bring the meeting to order. I will start it with a land acknowledgement. In the spirit of respect, authenticity, and reconciliation, the town of Slave Lake honors and acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional lands of Sarge First Nation within Treaty 8 territory, home to Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples who have occupied these lands since time immemorial. So anybody have anything to add to the agenda? Any changes to the agenda? Okay. We will add a closed session under FOIP section 23, 24, 27, HR and personnel. Can I get a motion to?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you. All in favor? Thanks, that's carried. Minutes of previous meetings, page 3 of our package. July 5th. Councilor Hughes.
Motion to accept the minutes of Tuesday, July 5th meeting as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Page 6 in our package, minutes from July 12th. Councilor Gromlich.
My mic's not working. Oh, there we go. Make a motion to accept the committee of the whole meeting minutes of July 12th.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Page 15 of our package, August 8th minutes. Sorry.
Motion to accept the special meeting of council minutes from August 8th, 2022 as presented.
Perfect. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. And page 16, next page, August 9th, special meeting. Councilor Ward.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of August 9th, 2022, special meeting of council as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's carried. Any questions for the CAO? Oh, sorry, Councilor Hughes.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you might be able to provide us with a brief update on just the downtown stuff, how everything is going. I'm getting questions about the timeline there, so just wondering if you might have any updates for us.
Yeah, so the most recent update that I had from our project manager, who's unfortunately not here tonight, is they finished or completed most of the framing or the rebarring for the main section there. And we're actually supposed to be doing some pouring today, with a good chunk of the pouring, the non-colored pouring being starting tomorrow. And then weather permitting, the remaining portions over the next few days. So everything still is on track to be completed prior to all in.
All right, any other questions? Moving on in the agenda, reports and new business. Okay, let the record show that Councillor Gromlich was stepping out. All right, Lori, floor is yours.
Okay, your worship and members of council, the purpose of this report is to obtain approval from council to enter into a development agreement with Eagle Nest Holdings Limited for the construction of a low pressure sanitary sewer main line and service connection. The applicant is Eagle Nest, Dave Eschpeter, and the subject properties are Plan 2803 TR Block 2 Lot 3, located at 1215 Main Street Northeast. So we've been working with Mr. Eschpeter on an endeavor to assist agreement that would allow him to construct a low pressure sanitary sewer main line and a service connection for his industrial property. This agreement was drafted by Brownlee LLP when Mr. Abe Peters was contemplating a similar project to this on Caribou Trail Southwest. As such, the agreement was modified for this project and ensures that the town's interests in this development are protected, and has been drafted in accordance with the town's policies and the development standards and procedures. So I'll give you a brief outline of the issues that are dealt with within the agreement. So the project scope includes the construction of a low pressure sanitary sewer main that will provide a service connection to Mr. Eschpeter's lot. As well as other adjacent properties which are shown on Schedule B of the agreement. With respect to acceptance of municipal improvements, the agreement defines the scope and outlines the process for approval and acceptance of the engineered drawings and construction and acceptance of the required municipal improvements or infrastructure. The agreement also outlines all the obligations of the developer and the town of Slave Lake with respect to construction and acceptance of that municipal infrastructure. The agreement also deals with security, and it will be provided to the town in the form of an irrevocable letter of credit equivalent to 50% of the estimated construction cost. The LOC will be submitted to the town prior to the start of construction. The agreement also deals with benefiting lands, which is outlined in Schedule B. The benefiting lands were determined by Jeff Fetter Associated Engineering. So when and if adjacent benefiting landowners advise that they wish to connect to the sanitary sewer line, they will be notified of their obligation to pay their proportionate share of the cost back to the developer. Please note that the obligation to pay is only triggered by the commitment to connect to the subject main line. With respect to endeavor to assist, as the developer is required to construct the municipal infrastructure that benefits future landowners, so they have the ability to connect to this low pressure sewer line. The agreement also provides the developer with an ability to collect from those future landowners when and if they connect. Schedule G provides the proportionate share applied to the benefiting lands based on the parcel size. The town's obligation in this respect is to notify future landowners, developers who wish to connect to the main line that there is a fee to connect that is owed to Mr. Eschpeter. The town does not attempt to collect those funds for the developer, and payment is only triggered upon future connection. The developer will be required to submit actual construction costs once the project is complete so that the calculation can be updated to reflect the actual construction cost rather than the estimate. Fees payable by developer are outlined in Schedule F and are all in accordance with town policies. So we're recommending the town enter into the endeavor to assist. But before we get there, I thought I could also provide council with some options when considering an endeavor to assist agreement. So there are other ways in which to finance a project like this that I thought you may be interested in hearing about. And there is a handout that was provided. So option one is the developer constructs and pays for the municipal infrastructure, and we enter into a development agreement, which is exactly what's happening with this endeavor to assist. This is as the town will eventually own the some of that municipal infrastructure. The town requires that it is designed and constructed in accordance with the town's development standards and good engineering practices. In addition, the town then ensures that the infrastructure is inspected and accepted in accordance with our IAC, initial acceptance, and final acceptance processes. Any deficient municipal infrastructure is either repaired or funds are withheld from the security to pay for that. All of the details are included with respect to the IAC and FAC are included in the development agreement. And these are also outlined in the town's development standards and procedures. So this all coincides together. With respect to security, to reduce the risk to the town also takes security. In accordance with our development standards and procedures, security is provided at 50% of the estimated cost to construct the municipal infrastructure. The preferred form of security is an irrevocable letter of credit and is required after the development agreement is signed and before construction commences. Why does the town take security? Security is held to ensure that the project will be completed in accordance with the town standards, and in the event of default, the town takes 50% of the estimated cost to construct that municipal infrastructure. I should note that there are some municipalities in Alberta that take 100 and some even 150% of construction costs. If the developer constructed deficient municipal infrastructure and it cannot be repaired, the town will take money from the security being held. Deficient municipal infrastructure will typically have a shortened lifespan and may require significant work or repair, and in some instances, a complete rebuild to replace it. If the developer defaults on the development agreement and cannot or is not willing to complete the project, in this instance, we would use the security. that we had. Another possibility is if the developer declares bankruptcy in the middle of the project and can't complete. Again, the town would need to complete the development, and we would use the security in that instance to pay for it. Acceptance of municipal infrastructure. Once the developer notifies the town that the construction of the municipal infrastructure is complete, an inspection is scheduled. This is called the construction completion inspection. If the municipal infrastructure constructed is in accordance with the detailed drawings and meets with the town's standards and procedures and good engineering practices, the town will issue an IAC or initial acceptance certificate. Once that IAC is issued, the security being held is reduced and the municipal infrastructure is placed on a 2-year warranty period. And how the reduction of security works is reduction will be considered following the acceptance of the municipal infrastructure, providing that the total amount remaining shall not be less than 100% of the total estimated cost of the municipal infrastructure not yet accepted, plus 20% of all municipal improvements still subject to the provisions of the required guarantee period. The security may be increased in accordance with our town standards to 100% if the infrastructure to be installed by the developer has had, and the town has had previous experience with that developer that would warrant such an increase. So far, we have not had to do that. The warranty period. During the 2-year warranty period, the developer is responsible for the maintenance of the municipal infrastructure that's constructed. Just prior to the end of the 2-year period, the developer has his engineer inspect the municipal infrastructure and then deal with any deficiencies there may be. He then requests a final inspection that the town attends. If there are no major deficiencies, the town accepts the municipal infrastructure, and we issue an FAC or final acceptance certificate. And it's at this point, the municipal infrastructure becomes the town's and we own it and maintain it thereafter. So some positive considerations for this type of agreement is that the town assumes little risk. Developer pays for and constructs the municipal infrastructure, and only those landowners who benefit pay, i.e. the general tax base does not pay for infrastructure they don't benefit from. Negative consequences from the developer standpoint for sure is that the developer is assuming most of the risk, and they may be waiting a long time before others will connect to the system and pay their proportionate share. Another way to pay for a project of this nature is that the town constructs and pays. In this option, the town undertakes the construction. Current funding sources for a project of this nature are the MSI, the gas tax fund, and reserves. Grants may be available, but are often matching grants and are clearly defined such that grants may not be available for the project being considered. So positive considerations is the developer in this instance assumes no risk. The developer no longer waits for others to connect to pay their proportionate share. The town chooses the contractor to complete the work, and the town chooses when they will take the project on. Some of the negative consequences is the town assumes all the risk, and the general tax base pays for infrastructure they likely don't benefit from. So i.e. this is not a process where only those that benefit pay. And grants may not be available or might be matching, which would limit the funding options. And finally, the last option to pay for a project would be the town constructs and benefiting landowners pay their proportionate share through a local improvement levy. So how they work is a local improvement levy is initiated by petition in accordance with the MGA. A sufficient petition must have two-thirds of the affected landowners with 50% of the assessed value agree to the local improvement levy. Local improvement programs can be initiated by a landowner who wishes council to undertake a specific project, or they can be initiated by the town. In both instances, a sufficient petition is required for the project to take place. Local improvement levies in the past have been based on front and flank calculations, wherein the benefiting landowner would pay based on the length of property boundary and front property boundary and flanking property boundary or side. And that distance is applied to a cost per front meter, a construction cost. The affected landowners would have the option to pay the total cost at the end of the construction or pay annually. Those that choose to pay annually also pay interest on the amount over time, because essentially the town borrows money and then lends it to them over time. In a local improvement program, the town always covers a portion of the project cost, the tax base as a whole, and for portions of municipal infrastructure that cannot be applied to an adjacent property owner or benefiting landowner. These projects in the past were funded by grants if applicable, the MSI gas tax fund and reserves, as well as funds collected under the local improvement levy. A few years ago, the town moved away from local improvement levies and paid out those outstanding levies at that time. The vast majority, if not all projects undertaken utilizing a local improvement levy were for road rehabilitation projects. What the town was finding at the time was that the cost per front meter was very high, and the annual local improvement levy was often higher than the annual tax bill for most of the residential properties. Further, over time, the town was capping the cost per front meter, trying to reduce the annual cost to the adjacent benefiting and affected landowners, and was taking on more and more of the overall project cost through the tax base as a whole. So the vast majority of funding for local improvement programs was really coming from the MSI, GTF, and reserves. So that's why they moved away from them. Positive considerations for a local improvement levy is a developer, again, assumes no risks and no costs, and again, is not waiting to be paid back. Negative consequences is the town assumes all the risk. The general tax base as a whole pays for a portion of the infrastructure that they don't benefit from. So it's not a process where only those that benefit pay. Grants may not be available. Local improvement levies can also be removed or appealed through the tax assessment appeal process. So this means funds that the town may have planned in the project and levied, they won't get if they are successful in the appeal. If the local improvement program is petitioned down, then the project is delayed. So I just wanted to talk about similar past projects. To ensure my recollection was accurate with respect to similar past projects, I spoke with Jeff Fetter, Associated Engineering. The town has in the past initiated road rehab projects and lane construction projects, et cetera, utilizing either local improvement levies and or other forms of funding. That said, we both do not recall that the town has ever moved ahead, at least in the last 20 some years, with a project for water or sanitary sewer like the project Mr. Eschpeter is proposing. And finally, I've attached a map. Ken Casey prepared it that identifies all the lots in purple are those industrial properties within town that are not serviced with sanitary sewer. Questions?
Councilor Ferguson?
Couple questions here. So when you wait for offshore one, talks about the warranty period. So I'm assuming after the 2-year warranty period and that everything is signed off with an FAC there, do they get back the rest of their security?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to include that. Yeah, once the FAC is issued, everything that we're holding is refunded back unless there's deficiencies noted in the FAC inspection that can't be repaired by the developer, and the town will withhold a certain amount. As I indicated, often those deficiencies result in a shortened lifespan on that municipal infrastructure. So we would hold back equivalent funds for that. But typically they get everything back at that point.
And it also speaks to some benefiting lands. So can you please walk us through that process, that if a benefiting landowner would like to tie in, how does that work? And then how does the original developer recoup their fees exactly?
Okay, so what the benefiting lands was, that was decided by our engineers, and what they, he puts together a map for me of those landowners that can tie on to the system at some point in the future and would pay a proportionate share. That's how that's determined. What I did then was I figure out the lot area and then divide it by, for each of the benefiting lands, and then divide it by the overall project cost to figure out what their percentage is. So the bigger the parcel of land that will tie on, the greater their proportionate share that they paid towards the overall project cost. So then what happens is Mr. Eschpeter completes the project. He brings me the final construction costs. I update these numbers. Say in 5 years down the road, one of those landowners that has been identified as a benefiting landowner comes and he says, I want to tie on, then he would be advised, you would need to pay this amount of money to Mr. Eschpeter, and there is an interest calculation over time that is applied to that as well. So he would pay that in addition to having to extend that main line as well.
Sorry,
And
just
his
one,
own service
just
connection.
one point of clarification. The benefiting landowners don't necessarily mean that they could tie onto that line today.
That's
It
right.
just means that this first portion would be if those benefiting landowners wanted to have sewer connections at a future date, this first piece would be one of the pieces that are required. They would still have to build
A section of line.
a section of main line before they could tie in. So benefiting landowners can't tie in necessarily today, but if they wanted to, they would have needed this first portion to be covered.
Okay, thank you for the
So there's a
clarification.
difference between,
Yeah, it's so just so that you're aware, the sanitary sewer being stubbed off on 10th Avenue Northeast. So on the west side of Main Street North, right across from Atco Electric, that's where the sanitary line ended. So what the developer is going to be required to do is extend the main line from there all the way to his property, and then a little bit beyond that, and then run a service line over to it. So that proportionate share that the other benefiting landowners are paying is for the section of line that he has extended from where it sits now to his, just beyond his property.
Thank you.
And then for, can I?
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
I didn't do the hand up thing. So in this option one, the benefiting landowners obviously have a portion of this 40,800 that's in the package here as well. But then in addition to that, outside of this, then they're each paying, in my head, I think the last I heard was 10 to 15,000 to tie in separately. So we're talking about the funding of the main line, and then each
And they,
there will have to pay their own tie-in.
to extend that line, like the
Correct, that's-
main line. Okay.
Yeah, I understand that the line's done in sections,
Okay.
and this only gets us, this 40,000 only gets us so far.
Right,
But that then, the developer, Mr. Eschpeter, would then have to pay for the 10 to 15 to connect
right,
to this $40,000 line extension.
correct.
I just make sure that's the.
So then the benefiting owners would have to pay the numbers you have on page 41 there.
Yes.
Say, so the first one is only 1.3, or is that
Let me Just have a look. What page did you say that was on? Sorry?
page 41? Or is that $1,300? That can't be right.
Yeah, so, yeah, lot one is only, 1A is only 0.79 of a hectare, so they ended up being 3.2% of the overall project.
Okay.
So they would pay $1,337.60, you know, roughly, because these aren't the final numbers, to Mr. Eschpeter. And then they would still have to construct a portion of main line
The
and
main
their
line
service
and then to
connection.
tie in on their own property.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these are, yeah, I'm not correct. Okay. You have any more questions? Go ahead.
I'm gonna be Steve today. Steve's usually the one that asks all the questions. So I struggle a little bit with this. And it's not so much this, the document you prepared. I don't struggle with the information in that. What I struggle with is the fact that I believe that utilities are a basic service. So I have a hard time with the fact that we are asking developers, so whatever happened in my mind from council back in the day with this was their decision. But I personally believe that utilities are a basic service. So I struggle with the fact that we have tax-paying residents in town that don't have access to this municipal service that then we would charge for over time through utility bills. So I struggle with the fact that utilities are a basic service. I struggle with the fact that after this is constructed, the town of Slave Lake effectively owns that municipal pipe service, even though we essentially didn't fund it. It was funded by this resident. And that on a, I guess on a higher level, I struggle with the fact that I said the word struggle like 4 times, but when we're looking at our economic development program and our strategic plan, so I'm just like stepping out of this numbers and the agreement right now. We're talking about economic development, which includes not only attracting businesses to our region, but supporting our local businesses. So we want to make the quality of life, in my opinion, better for everyone here, which also includes our tax-paying businesses. So if we are trying to make life better for our existing businesses, I struggle with requesting them to fund sewer service. I did a little, after reading this report, I did a little bit of reading on some other municipalities. So for instance, Vegreville and Morinville, if you go directly to their websites, they say we provide water and sewer utilities to every resident and business. So it's not out of the norm for towns of our similar size to look at providing these services. So I don't know, I thought we could just have potentially a little bit of discussion on that.
I actually had that same question is, did we actually go back to any of those people along that line and say, hey, we have one person that's interested, is anybody else? Like, did we do our due diligence on that?
Well, I don't know that you would call that doing due diligence. I mean, in the past, we did have that discussion with the developers, both of them, that if they wanted council to consider paying a portion of the project, that they could come forward and ask that for that. I don't know that they ever have. I had the same conversation with Ben Fiddler with Dog Island Brewery. So at I guess the stance before now is that council hasn't been interested in doing it, but this is a new council and maybe they are. But that offer was given to those developers. I mean, right now, this is the option is you want it and we don't provide the service, then you would pay for it. And if you don't want to pay for it and you want council to consider cost sharing or paying the whole thing, then you would request that of council.
Yeah, I'm on the same mind of Frankie is actually that it is a municipal service that we should be providing. And it almost seems like a miss that we didn't go back to those people, actually along that line for sure, and say, you know, we have interested people. Why can't we do it as a project? Because I'm sure it would be cheaper for everybody, including the town, especially with mobilizations. Because, you know, if we have one hooking up this year, one hooking up next year, one hooking up 5 years down the line, the mobilization costs are, you know, just going to be enormous each time. So I don't know. It just seems like a miss to me that we didn't go back and ask them.
It's really based on the council of the day. And the direction we've received from councils previous is they were not interested in picking up those costs.
Well, and I don't think, like, to interject, I don't think it's like, this isn't a commentary on administration, and council of the day might not have felt that it was relevant at the time, but I'm speaking for myself as a counselor, I find this incredibly relevant right now, as far as cost sharing. And I know this project has taken a bit of time to get through, just regardless of reason, it's just taken a bit of time. So I know that they're anxious to do this, but I would be one to want to consider to make this a capital project personally.
There would be just a couple of things I should mention there. There is a couple of things that Jeff and I talked about. Like, I haven't talked to Jeff Fetter with Associated about capacity or any of that stuff. So I don't know any of that preliminary information at this point. Like whether putting in a main line is one thing, but whether or not there's enough service capacity in the area might require the installation of another lift station or something to that effect. There may be additional infrastructure required in order to do it. And I don't know, like that would all be done at the prelim design stage and when you're sitting down with your project management. And then, of course, you know, funding the project, where's the funding coming from, which is a capital budget discussion as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree with that. I think this portion of the line is definitely reasonable given within what we've voted on outside of budget discussions. And then I understand that further development of that line or development in other areas would take additional engineering, obviously.
Yeah.
Lift station.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just talking about,
Just broad strokes.
well, I'm talking about broad strokes and I'm talking about this first portion of the line. I think, I personally think it needs to be done.
So in terms of capital project, you mean that it would be the town that foots the bill?
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting, is that out of the, gonna get the name of the fund wrong, so somebody help me out here. Future expenditures, that fund that we transferred some funds into from the surplus from the last year, that we would use that to fund this project, knowing that it's taken around 16 months to get done. And this is just coming from me. I'm not speaking obviously on behalf of you guys, but I firmly believe that utilities are a basic service. And I have a very hard time telling businesses of Slave Lake, tax-paying businesses of Slave Lake, that we aren't going to provide that for them. So that's kind of the stance that I feel on that. Price is ready.
I don't necessarily disagree, but normally a developer, when they develop something, they're putting all those services in to begin with, and then they're recouping that cost for the cost of the lots. So the landowners are still paying for it, albeit in a different way. So that would be my concern there.
I do understand that, but, I don't know what happened at development back in the day, because this is normally something that would have been completed with regards to infrastructure at that time, in my opinion, or should have been. But again, that was, some of these businesses there have been around longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
So I don't really know the answer to that. What I do know is that property value should increase because the values of these lots or these businesses, because they all have existing buildings, would increase to the fact that they have additional service provided. So ultimately, the town is going to end up requisitioning something out of that, is my guess, is that their values would increase. Plus, even though our utilities are usually serviced on a cost, like a evening out basis, like cost recovery, I still think that there is invoicing all those lots per month for the utilities, all those would help with the cost sharing and that. I also think as a town, like, the town's not run as a business. And so I understand that we need to be fiscally responsible, but we're also not in this for profit. And, you know, when there is a little bit of surplus from, that did come up, I think this is something that, in my mind, I would like to consider doing.
Should also mention that there will be an endeavor to assist coming forward for Dog Island Brewery. So I'd expect that it would be the same ask, and probably as indicated on that purple map, like once we start down that road, and not saying we shouldn't, that would be the expectation, is that you would see more of those.
And in my
Coming forward.
opinion, and I know I've been talking a lot, so everyone wants to chime in, so I'll let you guys do that in a second. But in my opinion, this isn't an isolated thing. Now, we might not be able to service all those lots in 1 year. That might not be a possibility, but when these things come through, I think we need to take a look at it. I think it's for all the businesses down there. To me, it doesn't make sense, that they weren't serviced in the first place. But when you're looking at capital investment and economic development and wanting to attract businesses to our region and wanting to support existing businesses,
And we've always said that we want to be business friendly as well. So,
I think by not having sewer, this is not business friendly.
yeah, I agree.
Kim, oh, sorry. Quiet, Kim.
Okay, my turn to chime in. So when you say, Frankie, that you're thinking of this as a capital project, do you mean just like the main line for like, I just want to elaborate what exactly you're kind of pitching when you say that?
If I'm making up a pitch on the fly,
Yeah.
my pitch on the fly would be that this first portion, which from what I have, my conversations with Jeff, that this first portion use the, as recommended by the town's engineer, reviewed the plans. And it's the town's recommended contractor, because again, it's municipal construction that we're going to own, so we would do that.
Right.
So in my understanding, instead of this endeavor to assist the county, we would approve the capital for this first portion of the line. Then as subsequent requests come in, we take a look at them and we look at our capital budgeting for 2023. And apparently we're looking at 3-year budgeting later on in this meeting. We start taking a look, you know, I understand that we can't do everything tomorrow. And I'm not saying we need to spend all this money tomorrow. What I'm saying is we should start somewhere. And if we actually care about businesses, especially local existing businesses that are on our town land, then I think we need to make a move. And it's not necessarily flashy or exciting because it's sewer,
Yeah. Okay.
But it's a
but to me,
necessity.
it's a basic service and you're not providing it. I didn't know that, and this is my own ignorance, is I didn't know that there were unserviced businesses in town.
Yeah, so I actually
Surprised.
didn't know that either because I don't work out there and so I haven't had that experience. So that was definitely shocking to learn. This is a really hard question, but do you have any sort of estimate of like how many businesses approximately aren't serviced in the purple map area? Because I'd be very curious to know.
1, 2, 3, just hang on, I can give you.
I know that's really hard, but
So I know it's the 8th Street, part of the 8th Street area by the old Kodiak shop doesn't have it. The strip on Caribou Trail, almost to the tracks, doesn't have it.
There's about 40 lots, but there are lots that appear. I don't know how to explain it because I
There are
can't.
some lots that don't have construction on.
Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's some lots here that exist in paper but don't actually exist physically out there on the. There's about 5 of them, so 35 roughly industrial lots that don't have, including the airport. And I count
that's a
that whole
pretty
big
big
one.
chunk.
Don't have sanitary, like that's what this, if you'd account the purple,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what you're looking at is about 35.
That's where I struggle with this is we're talking about the fact that we don't have a lot of industrial space. So we're trying to attract industrial and commercial businesses to our town because that's what brings jobs.
Yeah.
Economic development, the more residents you have, the more houses you have, the lower your tax bills go. That's just economic
Common math.
math.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. So if that's the strategic plan we've set as a council and with administration and the leadership team, to me, this is something we have to look at. Whether or not councils in the past wanted to, I don't think we can constantly be held by council.
what they
I just
Yeah,
wanted
for
to
sure.
comment that I don't believe that the decision to not service with sanitary sewer
I
was
don't
a
think it was like
decision
a
of.
vote or something.
No, I don't even
It's
think it
just-
was a vote. I think the issue is, I know the issue with the ones along Caribou Trail was that the sanitary sewer line at that time ended near the Vanderwell Gathering Place. The town extended it down down the fire hall property and then Murray Broadhead, then we brought it down through Murray Broadhead's property. And then it was extended down into Fournier when Fournier was developed. So the reason those industrial lots didn't have sanitary sewers because it was so far away to get it there. Right? And sometimes I call that like leapfrog development. Some stuff happens over here and nothing happens in between. And so the services don't get carried. And likely, I don't know exactly the stuff in the north because that's really old, but I would suspect it was the same thing. We didn't have a water line on Main Street North until a few years ago. It didn't extend beyond Atco Electric or somewhere in that realm.
Yeah.
On Main Street. So those, it was very likely not a decision as more a reality of limitations around where the infrastructure was.
Right, and I wasn't implying, I
makes
should
sense.
correct myself, I wasn't implying that it was like, do you give sewer to these
Yeah.
businesses, yes or no?
Yeah.
What's happened is council over the years has made decisions that were pursuant to their budget, financial situation, and natural disasters at the time in order to get servicing in, but just because we have it this way, I think we need to look at this and
That was then, this is now? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with you then too. I think that sewage needs for businesses is an essential service that the town should be providing in some way, shape or form.
Councilor Ferguson?
You know, I would just make a comment here. I would caution about using our reserves to fund this on the fly. What we do for one, we're likely going to have to do with for everybody else. There's numerous properties here. I guarantee you the final cost for servicing all this, then we'd be on the hook for well over $1 million. If this is something that we seriously want to explore, then we should direct administration to bring back a report with servicing costs. Otherwise, we're opening a Pandora's box and yeah, it's such a dangerous precedent in my mind without having all the information.
Sounds like you made a motion.
Okay. So I will make a motion then. Is that a lot of work, Lori, to come back?
It's actually won't be me. Once it shifts from a development agreement thing to a project, it'll go to Cush. So that's a question for him and I couldn't answer that.
Sounds like we have a couple comments here first before I make a
My
motion.
one concern would be, what is this going to cause delay to the current business owner, right? Like, that's my initial thought. If he's already been waiting
16 months.
16 months for this to go through, like, that's a long chunk of time. So
My thought would be to do both. If he wants to move ahead, approve the agreement and then make a subsequent motion to
I agree.
task administration, bring back a report.
So what does that leave in, for instance, this developer who, let's just say they wish to forge ahead because of the timeline, which is potentially partially our responsibility as well for the delay in timeline. I'm not sure of all the circumstances, but there is significant delays there. My question is, let's say we are going to go ahead in the future with that and they've paid to put in this town-owned infrastructure. What do we do about that?
My thought would be is if we did decide to take a methodology where the town puts in services for all these properties, they could apply to have that refunded back to them after the fact.
Refunded from the town.
Their cost of development
cost
for
of development.
for that connection.
But I don't think it'd be prudent to make a decision on, spending, capital funds to do this without a lot more substantial more information.
Absolutely, yeah.
but where does that leave us for today, I guess?
Well,
Right.
again, I think Councillor Ferguson's right. I know that Mr. Eschpeter I'd hate to leave here tonight without a motion for him to accept the agreement or enter into the agreement, and then he's even more frustrated because again, more delays because he can't start.
Yeah, I don't want to delay.
No, I don't want to see that.
Not after this. not the time.
I will make two motions here. I'll start off with the first one.
Perfect.
Move that council enters into the endeavor to assist development agreement with Eagle Nest Holdings Limited for the construction of a low pressure sanitary sewer main line and service connection for Eagle Nest Holdings Limited located at Plan 2803 TR Block 2 Lot 3.
Okay, any other discussion on that motion? All in favor? Okay,
And then I'd like to make a subsequent motion to task administration to bring back a report outlining costs to service the remaining properties that currently do not have sewer sanitary service
And can I?
and recommendations.
Yeah, recommendations. I was gonna say
Recommendations,
recommendations, because ideally as an aside from that, so that was the motion, but as an aside from that, in my opinion, I would like to see, and I will ask for, is if we could look at some type of phased approach. So I understand that doing it all at once, as Councillor Ferguson said, is likely not feasible. But there's multiple funding approaches, there's debentures, we could look at doing it in phase, depending on need, depending on business, if business owners want to connect. There's some options there. And then I would also like us not to forget that since we've obviously approved the developer, Mr. Eschpeter's request for this, that there is something in there regarding that we haven't forgotten, because ultimately this is what led us down this path. So I don't want to forget the fact that he has forked out this
yeah,
for the town of
perfect.
Slave Lake infrastructure. Should we choose to, at least if we choose to fund all or part, I want him to have some recourse available to that. So I would like us not to forget that.
Is that motion clear, Joanna?
Sorry, my commentary was all over the place.
Move that council direct administration to bring back a report on the cost recommendations and scope of project phases to provide sanitary sewer services for the remaining properties. Is that clear? I didn't put anything about the current project.
I think that's clear enough.
I think so too, yeah.
I can pass that note on to Kush
Yeah, just
with respect to that.
I just would like to keep it with this, because if this report's coming back, that's just one detail that I think is important, because this is what started all of it, and I don't think it's, especially because you say we never, in your recollection of 20 years of town of Slave Lake history, we haven't had an endeavor to assist for sewer.
No, we haven't.
So it's
Okay.
not like there are a bunch of other ones to go back on
Right.
for sewer.
Yeah.
So this would be the first one to start that, and due to the timeline, I agree with, I don't want the developer to be stuck when they've been waiting this long, so to me, that's a happy, I still think it should be capital, but okay, I will accept this.
Okay, any more discussion on that last motion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thanks,
Thank
Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay, moving on, page 42 of our package, Roland Schmidt. Oh, yeah. You left.
Here for.
Yeah, he's probably on his phone.
Okay, good evening, everyone. The purpose of the report tonight is just to get approval to transfer the outstanding utilities to their respective property taxes. Utilities that are 90 days past due total $40,939. Arrears letters have been sent to all residents via email or mail about past due amounts. This will be the third transfer to tax rolls for the current year. May 31st was 25,000. February 28th was 39,000. And our recommendation is that council approve the utility transfer to property taxes for outstanding amounts up to July 25th, 2022.
Okay, any questions for Roland? If not, I will entertain a motion. Councilor Ward,
I'll make the motion, move to direct administration to transfer utility arrears over 90 days as of July 25th, 2022 to their property tax rolls.
any discussion on that motion? All in favor? That is carried. Thanks, Roland. Gary, census data.
So good evening. Back in January, council passed a motion directing administration to bring scenarios for census data collection and possible costs sometime during 2022 for consideration in future budgets. We started carrying out research and looking into what is all involved and entailed in the conducting municipal census. Reached out to the cities of Grand Prairie and Airdrie as they have extensive experience in conducting censuses. And traditionally in the past, Alberta Municipal Affairs would produce a population list, and this would be the official population that is used for grant applications and other factors. That would be based upon Stats Canada census or municipal census data. In 2021, the Alberta government announced that they're moving towards a population estimation model. So where census data is available, they would use that, but they would also do a population estimation for those years in between the censuses. So I included in my report an example. In 2016, a census was done by Stats Canada. Our population, as per Stats Canada's website, was 6,651 people. Then the Alberta government carried out a sample population estimation that really ranges from 6,820, declining down to 6,333 in 2021. However, then in 2021, a Stats Canada census was also conducted, and their final population count comes out at 6,836. There's no direct information as to what the Alberta government is going to do with the population estimations. According to my sources, there's it would be the new census information be used to inform their modeling, but they were going to continue to run off of their modeling in terms of their grants and so on. So we know that many cities and other municipalities carry out a census where there's high growth areas. So it's not just for grants, but it's also for growth patterns, for planning, for development. I've also seen census data used for annexation issues. Both Grand Prairie and Airdrie do carry out census on every 2 years, with the exception of a couple of years in and around the Stats Canada census. I have budget numbers there that what City of Grand Prairie spends in my report, although that's not necessarily relevant to the town of Slave Lake. In doing all that research, I also found that City of Airdrie has a software system that they use for their census, and the town of Slave Lake could use their software. Cost is about $10,000, but that also includes the use of multiple iPads that census collectors would actually use when they go door to door. It's very important to know that any census that is carried out has to be done within specific standards and must be justifiable back to both Stats Canada, to municipal affairs, and other government entities. So some of the discussions or the challenges is that it is a significant undertaking to do a census. And as the Alberta government moves towards the population estimation model, there's no guarantee that the population changes will be found in the census will be a basis for grant funding. One example is that Municipal Sustainability Initiative, or MSI, is being changed into Local Government Fiscal Framework, LGFF. We know that the formula for LGFF will include population, but it's not population alone. There's a number of other factors. I think Mr. Schmidt presented a report at the last council meeting around all the other factors involved. With that in mind, there would have to be significant changes to the town's population before there's significant changes in funding. The other piece that's not included in my report is it also determines what the overall pot of the money is in LGFF. That is shrinking. Changes in population will affect it to a degree, but the amount of money coming in will still not increase substantially. Oftentimes, other grants are funded more based around a range of populations. So for example, if you have between 5,000 and 10,000 people, you're eligible for X number of dollars. So again, there would have to be significant growth to see substantial changes in grants from that. So really the options that council has is to remain a status quo and rely on StatsCan census and the Alberta government's population estimations. We could move forward with and fully funding a municipal census in 2023 to help inform those population estimations. Or of course, you can always request further information from administration. At this point in time, though, our recommendation is that the return on investment for conducting a census really doesn't appear to outweigh the costs. And so administration is recommending that the town does not conduct a census at this time.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate you taking the time to bring this report when this was something that actually I was quite interested in. The reason why I wanted it was more for an indicator of economic health and to see if we're trending in the right direction with population growth, but obviously for a cost of at least $60,000, I don't think it'd be a good use of dollars. So yeah, I'm in favor of receiving reports information.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess the motion.
I'll make a motion that we receive this report as information.
Perfect. Any other discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. And Gary, you're up next as well, multi-year budgeting.
Yeah. So I apologize. I wanted to bring this report to council earlier when I was in the interim CAO role, and just it's finally coming to you now. So the town currently carries out annual operating and capital budgets. Administration produces spending plans for future years. We are required under the Municipal Government Act to produce a 3-year financial plan for operating and 5-year for capital. And it is required under the Act for council to review those every year. However, many municipalities are moving towards multi-year budget cycles. The advantages to multi-year budget cycles that obviously it takes less time for administration to develop and for council to review it every year. And it allows for items to be deferred for expenses for future years. So for example, if council's debating an item for 2022, let's say, they could always defer that to the 2023 year of the same budget. And it allows for looking at a bigger picture or a longer term picture of budgeting without losing track of some of those pieces that sometimes gets deferred. The other thing that many municipalities use this is they are actually able to define, I'll say, a forecast of future tax increases. Later in my report, I'll talk a little bit about how budgets can be tweaked on the off cycle, but it gives them an idea of what future tax increases would look like, let's say for 2022 and 23 and so on. It's actually laid out in the budgeted plan. Of course, the budgeted plan can always be amended. And it's really more for that longer term planning that it does help achieve council's goals in terms of strategic planning. Of course, the municipality that I'm most familiar with is the city of Grand Prairie, where I used to be employed. I'll explain how their cycle works, and this is just how one municipality does this. So when council is elected, they essentially inherit a budget from the previous council, but that allows them time to go through orientation, to learn the organization and come up with a strategic plan. From there, administration takes their strategic plan and develops business plans for each department, develops budgets for their department, and then presents it back to council for approval by the end of that year. That is a 4-year budget cycle. So they're passing 4 years of budgets all at once. And once it is approved by council, that establishes their budget. Now, once a year, council will allow for amendments to the budget. And they allow for those unforeseen things that come along, grant changes or unforeseen costs. And those are generally made by a council motion to amend the budget accordingly. And typically for the city of Grand Prairie, size, large organization, they use one council meeting day a year to do those amendments. So it's usually generally a fairly well brought together process, but also at the same time, we're not talking about making total changes to the whole package. And so then it overlaps again with by 1 year for the new council that's coming in. So what we're proposing is to look at for starters, an operating capital budget is really developed for the 2023-2024 year. So a 2-year cycle with a forecast for spending into 2025, just sort of similar. The forecast piece is similar to what we forecast now. Going with 2 years gives us a chance to try multiple-year budgeting, but still within reasonable parameters. Should then any revisions be required to the 2024 piece of the budget, council could have a meeting partway through or towards the latter part of 2023 to make those amendments to the budget. They would be considered at that time. And this would be, as this is initial phase, both administration and council would obviously evaluate the process we go and make any adjustments to the process. Following that in 2024, consideration or discussion needs to happen if council feels comfortable with making another 2-year budget, which would overlap with the next council's term, or what steps we would want to take at that particular time. So obviously the options are we can remain doing our annual budgets each year, or we can move forward with a 2-year type of cycle or any other type of cycle that council deems to feel is appropriate. The key point here is that this aligns with the Municipal Government Act, as well as it allows council the flexibility to defer projects and to also to look at more of a long-range plan. And also is a considerable time-saving element for both administration and council when you think about the hours it takes to put this together every year. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, anybody have any questions? Our two accountants in the room have any questions?
I feel like as the accountant in the room, I'm expected to chime in that. I personally like the idea of multi-year budgeting with, like you said, the caveat that come normal budgeting time, so September to October, November-ish, that there's the opportunity to review and make amendments. I think one of the largest struggles for me personally as a new counselor coming in was that while administration did like a wicked job with the binder, Roland had an awesome binder for us. There wasn't I would have rather seen a budget and then adjust. With the amendment option, if there's something the new council significantly disagrees with, you have the option to change it. So I think as long as the policy and procedures say that, at council discretion, there is the ability to amend that. It would be nice to have had like a template, shall we say. I think it offers some continuity too, if you're looking at continuation between councils. Granted, strategic plan changes over time, but I think some of the elements tend to continue through. So I personally really like it.
Yeah, I like the overlap too. Any other questions? Councilor Hughes?
I'd like to make a motion.
Perfect.
I move that council directs administration to prepare capital and operating budgets for 2023 and 2024.
Great. Any other discussion on that motion? Otherwise, all in favor? And that is carried. Thanks, Gary. Alex. I kind of do, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Purpose of this report is to discuss the rescue truck replacement. In the 2022 capital budget, council approved a $500,000 for the replacement of the current rescue apparatus. And funding sources identified from the project are $100,000 from reserves and $400,000 from MSI. Keeping in mind that this project started in 2021 as we were reaching out to different builders to start to build the capital plan. After reviewing the RFPs that were sent out, we had 2 companies reply back, and going with the bid that was chosen, we'd be $168,000 over budget. The majority of this is due to increased cost of materials, the availability of materials, and the overall build times that have been extended due to the current situation. We have guaranteed a resale value of the current truck of $100,000 to help offset the overage of this cost. That money could increase once the truck is seen by the builder and they are able to get it out there and sell and get it advertised for sale. So then it would be a maximum, of $68,650,000 over budget. This is the only type of truck that the Regional Fire Service has. It's important for our operations in the fire service. It carries very specialized equipment from vehicle extrication, hazmat, and specialized rescue. Given the current economic environment and supply and demand of these types of apparatus, deferring this purchase would most likely mean an increased cost. And we have seen that they just put out another bid for an increased $100,000 to what we've received to a fire department down south. So it's still building even today. A couple of options are to approve the purchase with the increase in funding or to defer for a future year. Again, with the increase in costs, there's no guarantee that the cost will come down. The current capital reserves would see a further decrease of $68,000. The reserve at the end of 2021 had $304,000. Budget with transfers and expenditures was expected to have a reserve of $401,000. So with the additional drawdown, we would end up with $332,000 at the end of this purchase. As part of our mission, through partnerships and collaboration, we endeavor to provide timely emergency response, safer communities through sustainable fire and life safety initiatives, education and emergency response. By having modern and up-to-date equipment and apparatus, this allows us to continue to work towards meeting this statement.
All right, any questions for Alex? Councilor Ferguson?
So I haven't seen the capital budget in a little while, but I'm just wondering about what's coming down the pipes in the future and with the increased cost of this for the upcoming items, 2023 and beyond. Would it adversely affect those, or will we still be able to acquire everything that's is on that list?
So along with this truck and any of the future capital purchases, we have to be creative in how we manage those purchases. Our fleet is getting older and they are starting to come due over the course of the next 5 to 7 years. Most of our trucks were purchased pre-fire, with a couple of them being purchased basically off the shelf in 2011, 2012 with some of the money that came in. So working with the finance department, we're pushing those to the proper dates to make sure that we have the funding in place and moving things, extending the life of the current fleet as needed to make sure that we're able to meet those demands. We're also looking at, for lack of better terms, downsizing the fleet. So if we have 2 trucks and we could do with 1 truck, what would that look like? Combining those into 1 truck with the future replacement, so we're not purchasing 2 and things like that. Working with our regional partner in the MD to collaborate on some of those as well, so that we're not maybe purchasing the same amount of trucks that we have today.
Any other questions? Do we entertain motion?
Just a quick commentary. So this is the truck, sorry, I don't remember all of the fire service. This is the truck that's very unique to the region. There isn't another one that we have here. What?
Yep. So this is the only rescue truck in the region. It responds to most heavy rescues, anything other than a light passenger vehicle. It carries a very hefty set of rescue tools as well as stabilization, hazmat for spills, that types of things, rope rescue, water rescue. So we have fire trucks per se with the engines, they respond first. And then depending on the type of call, we'd roll a ladder truck, or in this case, for any of the major incidents, a rescue truck. So we carry 5 or 6 firefighters and the equipment that would need to be throughout the region. So this would respond to Flatbush, up Highway 88, to Asino, all corners of our of our response area as part of our agreement with the MD.
Question, I will make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that council approves amending the 2022 capital project fire services rescue apparatus replacement from $500,000 to $668,650 to be funded from the disposal of the current rescue unit 131 for $100,000, $168,650 from the fire truck and rescue reserve, and $400,000 from MSI.
All right, any other discussion on that motion? Otherwise, all in favor? And that's carried. Mr. Simpson?
Thank you. So the purpose of the report is to have council pass a motion to cancel scheduled regular meeting of council for September 20th. The schedule of council meetings is determined by a motion to council at the annual organizational meeting, and therefore it must be rescheduled in the same manner. Council had scheduled the regular meeting of council for September 20th, 2022 at the last organizational meeting in October 2021. Due to the upcoming 2022 Alberta Municipalities Conference being held in Calgary, council will be using September 20th as a travel day to attend the conference. The Town of Slave Lake Council regularly attends this annual conference and utilizes the event to meet with different provincial ministries to advocate for the town on various topics. So the options before you are to cancel the September 20th, 2022 regular council meeting, or option 2 to leave its schedule as it currently sits. Resource impacts of council meetings allow and promote discussion between town staff and council, and the cancellation of the September 20th meeting would be communicated in accordance with the advertising bylaw.
All right, any discussion on that? Otherwise, I will entertain the motion. Nobody wants to play
I'm
tonight?
just gonna let these guys go, but I'll make a motion, move that council cancel the regular meeting of council scheduled for September 20th, 2022.
Perfect. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. And then we have some correspondence.
Councilor Brandel, just please make note that I'm going to be stepping out.
Perfect, okay. Are you taking us through this, or is this just for information? Or
I
you-
can read through it if you like, or just hit the high points, and then essentially it's going to require some direction or motion from council.
Require a report to come back. Is that how this works with correspondence? It's usually it, correct?
Well, usually when we get a letter of this type, we do get a report too, but I wasn't sure what the
Yeah, it
consensus.
seemed odd to me that we have this letter without a report attached to it.
So like.
Well,
are
you
we
could definitely
expecting-
we could definitely make a motion to bring a report back, or you could make a motion based on the correspondence that's before you, I believe. So,
Okay,
I mean, I think all of the elements are contained within the report itself or within the correspondence itself.
okay, take us through it.
So on August 5th, 2022, the town of Slave Lake received the correspondence from the local law firm in town here in regards to Slave Lake Christian School Society. The letter was dated in response to an April 20th, 2022 letter for the address listed at Lot 14, Block 20, Plan 142. So the law firm acts on behalf of the Christian School Society. It's a nonprofit society with a primary purpose of operating schools. It's in response to a letter that was sent to the school dated April 20th from our planning department here. The letter informs the school that in 2014, the town levied a development charge against the property in the amount of $84,649.50 when the town undertook and paid for the redevelopment of a laneway and storm sewer system bordering the property. At the time of the development charge was levied, the property was owned by the provincial government, Alberta. We've been advised by the town that development charge was not levied against all lands that bordered and directly benefited from the project. Rather, the town only levied charges against the lands that both bordered the project and were also owned by the provincial government, Alberta. So the school society purchased the property from the provincial government in Alberta in February of 2020. As a part of its due diligence prior to purchasing the property, the school had extensive correspondence with the town regarding the property. They made 3 applications to the planning department that are listed there. Also, through its council, requested a tax certificate for the property prior to purchasing. After purchasing the property, they applied to the development permit in order to renovate the existing building for, I'm assuming to make the school. Until they received the letter, it was never informed by the town or the provincial government about the existence of the development charge. So from our discussions with the town, we understand that the existence of the development charge was required to be disclosed at the time the development permit was applied for. Further, we submit that the town ought to have disclosed the development charge's existence during the extent of correspondence. At this time, they're writing to request the town waive the development charge and not require the school to pay a contribution for the respect to the project. And that is the nature of the correspondence that's before you. Essentially, they're requesting the outstanding fee of $84,649.50 be waived.
Okay.
So, question. I believe we've discussed the initial letter going out at some point in time. I had remembered, because we have team realtors here, if there was a conversation about how on purchase, like, was it not whose responsibility is it to identify if there is this charge to be?
Usually it's done at the legal stage. Well,
That's
You know,
what I'm struggling with. That's usually when you find out
Yeah.
when you go to purchase something, there's some type of lien or
Yeah.
paperwork saying, hey, so I'm curious.
we usually pull title and it's usually on there and there's registered documents that we can pull too.
Yeah, so I don't believe in this case, if I recall correctly, and Lori would have been the one to answer the question, but we had spoken about this, how we got to the stage before. Development charges aren't registered against the title. So it wasn't popping on that initial check, but all of the law firms, local law firms that are conducting purchases are instructed by the planning department to make those inquiries with the town office, asking about any outstanding developmental charges. Which would have flagged this prior to the purchase taking place.
And that wasn't done.
And that was not done. The law firm did not do that in this instance. And I believe this partner, that's the owner of the firm that wrote the letter, wasn't aware of that longstanding sort of arrangement and
Right, because he's
practice.
new to town.
So this is how it got missed, and it wasn't picked up until the development permit came in by our planning department that we saw, hey, the development charge is still outstanding.
Okay.
So is it the, I don't know the MGA, that was it the town's responsibility to inform about the development charge on purchase, or is contacting the lawyer sufficient? Like, what's practice?
Well, it's usually after the fact that the town's notified.
I thought it said they tried to
Well, their
get,
point 3 is the town's planning and development department did not inform Canonia about the existence of the development charge either before or after they purchased the property.
Yeah, my understanding is that, again, it's probably 6 of one, half a dozen other, they're saying that they may have made the inquiry for the tax notice, but didn't make the inquiry necessarily for whether there was any outstanding development charges. So their position is that we made a call and asked for, any outstanding, on the title. We provided the title information, which the development charge is not registered against. They never asked the question. We never.
so the technicality
check.
of $84,000.
That's right.
I also feel like our planning department takes fairly extensive notes. And that's why I'm kind of surprised not to see a report with this type of communication. Because
And we could, this was just, and they very easily could, but these are roughly the circumstances. I think we knew this was potentially coming.
Why don't we do that? Because then Lori will be in the room to answer
just
questions
feel like
and then we'll have more of council here as well.
Yeah, we can definitely table it.
I feel like there's, I
Everybody's
feel like the
comfortable
other
with
two counselors do have some history on this as well, that they're.
So you want to delay this?
I wanted to,
For more
I
information?
would like to see a report come
An
back.
actual report.
That has, because obviously there's the side from whoever's being represented by this letter, and then there's planning and development, and without during planning and development, I have a hard time for us to make a discussion without both.
Precision,
Yeah,
with a little
make
bit
it
more
sorry,
background.
With only
Thank
half
you,
of
that's
the
the word I'm
information.
Yeah, I think I'd
got
like a little
half.
bit more background as well, but.
Okay, motion
So-
to table that then?
Yeah, we can table it for a report to come back.
Yeah, I would like a report to, motion to make a report to come back to council.
I guess we don't have to table it.
Frankie made that, Joanna?
It sounds like they want an urgent request, if we could see it in September meetings, I don't know what.
They already own the property. I don't know if there's anything, time's really ticking in. No, there's nothing that's gonna,
I would
but we
like
could
to
bring it
see
back at
request.
the earliest convenience.
Early, sure, I don't know what
It would, the earliest would be the September,
I'd just like some more information. That'd be great.
September, yeah, regular council meeting, September.
Okay, motion to table it on the floor. Any other question or discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. I have nothing for Mayor's Corner. So I will take a motion to go into closed session, please. Thank you, Frankie. All in favor?